Skywalker pursues a new adversary. Yoda deals with an attack on Ilum. A new threat of the Jedi emerges, and more as the Sky Guys are back to recap Season 2 of Clone Wars 03.
All right, we are back here on the Sky Guys, kicking off Micro Month once again. We had a very long layoff thanks to the Bad Batch interrupting us, but we are back on a continued journey starting on Star Wars podcast. They were talking about Clone Wars 03 Season 2 today. First up, the man's voice of the generation every single week. Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. Very excited to talk about this second part here, Season 2. I'm very excited to talk Star Wars with you guys as always. So I'm pretty ready to get into this.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nick Fraietta got stuck on Ilum trying to find a Kyber crystal, so he's not here with us today. But back with us again to continue the journey covering Clone Wars 03. Max Roberts is here. Max, how are you?
Good, Mike. Thanks for having me again. Happy to be back talking Clone Wars 03, Season 2.
Yep, only one more season left after this. It feels like we just started.
Yeah, it goes by quick. They're only 5-minute episodes, and they string them together into a full 30-minute flip.
Yep, for sure here. So, Pete, as we do every week here, you want to subscribe to the Sky Guys podcast. Do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search the Sky Guys, your favorite podcast platform, episodes there. And you want to hang around for Micro Month. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up here, so make sure you're subscribed.
Yeah, if you're new to this, you haven't heard me say it before, you should be subscribing. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. You get a lot of great Star Wars content. We've been covering everything under the sun when it comes to Star Wars, so we got you covered there. If you have heard this before and you are subscribed, I'm so sorry you have to hear me say this every week. I really am. But yeah, subscribe.
Yep. I'll also point out here that you can follow us on social media on @Sky Guys Podcast on Twitter X, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. All our fun stuff is on there. And Max is also a YouTube version. Mike Phillips on YouTube. We got the video version of this podcast. You can see Max's fun background where he's hanging out with Mace Windu here. And you get our props. I don't think Max has seen this one yet. We have a basically the Magic 8-Ball version of Yoda here.
Ah, very nice. Very, very nice.
I don't want to press his hand because one time he was answering questions on the podcast with us. And then I had to adjust his audio. It was a big mess.
I think I got that from my 7th grade teacher back in the day. I got him like the Yoda where you press his hand and he answers questions.
Yep, it's that exact one.
It is not that exact one, or is that exact one?
It's the exact model, not the one you get your 7th grade teacher.
Fair enough. Yeah, that thing was really cool, though.
That'd be kind of creepy if you had the one that Max gave his 7th grade teacher. Just throw that out there.
Same model.
Hey, for all we know, his 7th grade teacher could have been my uncle, for all we know.
Who's your uncle?
Yeah, it's true.
Apparently, your 7th grade teacher.
That would have been really funny.
Yep.
All right.
And also, but this is normally where we do the news here, but we're not doing it for two reasons. One, Nick's not here, so it's not fun to do without him. And two, we're recording this far in the past. So we were listening to this in May. This is being recorded at the end of January. So we can't predict what news will be out there yet, Pete.
I also think I just sucked so bad at the news last time. You don't want me doing it anymore. It's rough. Nick, I can't replace Nick. Nick cannot be replaced when it comes to the news. He's way too good at it. So I'm glad we have no news. I'm glad that we could just kind of truck along here.
In lieu of the news here, let's kind of have fun here, Pete. Let's do a prediction here. Like, how many of the main Bad Batch characters died in the season? This is coming out afterwards. We'll know the answer like that by the time you people are listening to this.
All of them.
Every one of them, even Omega.
Every last one of them. All Bad Batch characters go.
Max, you agree with that take?
My hot take.
Well, excluding Rex, because obviously he survives.
But he's not part of the Bad Batch. Like, are we talking? So, like, are we talking all?
Talking the team.
You mean like the main squad? Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like 2. I'm gonna say 2.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a few that are more disposable than others.
Yeah, I think Omega survived. I think the rest of them are going to die dying. I feel like that's my gut.
I forgot about Omega.
I think
Omega probably will survive, just because
he won't kill a kid.
That, but also too the amount of content you could probably get out of Omega in the future.
Yeah.
I think the Bad Batch has been done from Clone Wars to this at nauseum. I don't think you need to keep doing it. I think the story is great, and I think once you ended season 3, we don't have to see any more Bad Batch, and I don't think we should see any more Bad Batch. Not because it's bad, but because sometimes we don't want to, we don't want to beat a dead horse, right? Like we want to make sure that we're keeping it fresh and keeping it nice, and you pay the respect to the story that you need to. So I could see Omega living, so I will change my answer to everyone but Omega.
All right, so we'll see here, people. If we are horribly wrong on this, remember we record this months in advance. You can still tweet at us though at Sky Guys Podcast. You want to let us like have a laugh at our expense.
Listen, you're used to roasting me on the internet for all my stuff. Make sure you let us know.
Hermit crabs.
Hermit crabs, those fucking things, can't stand it.
All right. So let's get into season 2 of Clone Wars '03, which is why we're here today. So Max, like obviously we just watched Clone Wars '03 season 2 over the past week here. It's been a little bit since the audience has gotten back into it, but what did you think of season 2? It's obviously in Disney Plus, it's all part of volume 1. So this is the second half of that volume 1 you're watching.
I think that there's a little bit more. So, like the first half of the season, I think is very similar to season 1 in that it's these nice bite-sized bits of Star Wars. Like you have the battles with Mace Windu, you have the Ilum Temple attack. I think the latter part of the season is more story-driven, kind of trying to uh, push you towards episode 3. And you see that with Grievous, that's the big indicator, but also with Asajj Ventress and Anakin starting to fall to the dark side. And my recollection is that was what the series was supposed to be, was that you had a gap between episode 2 and episode 3, and this is supposed to bridge that gap. And it's supposed to develop some of the threads that you see in episode 3. And I think the latter part of the season is at least starting to get us there.
Yeah, P, I definitely feel like that the storyline started to get more like serialized towards the end of the season, where we had like a couple of shorts in a row connected to like certain plot threads, and we get the big Graves reveal at the end, which is the highlight of the season. So I do think I liked it a little better than season 1.
Yeah, it's not as disjointed to me. I think it's very cohesive comparatively, right? I mean, this is what was been said. I think you get a lot more story. You kind of get that lead up into episode 3. And not to say that the first part was bad. It seemed a little choppy, even though it was good. It just seems choppy, and I feel like they were just throwing something at the wall to see if it would stick. And then once they got renewed for a season 2, they're like, okay, let's work on the story a little bit.
Yeah, for sure here. So let's go through some general plot lines. Well, there's 4 sort of things I want to discuss here with the plot here. So I think the big one, which is I think the carryover from season 1, is this Anakin versus Ventress fight here, where Anakin pursues Ventress in deep space. They end up on Yavin 4. They have this big duel. Anakin turns into Rambo for about 5 minutes, and then like he throws her off a cliff and kills her. Basically, that's the end of Asajj Ventress in Clone Wars '03. So, Pete, what did you think of Rambo Anakin and his story arc here?
I actually really liked it. I think we get a glimpse of him harnessing that dark side, harnessing that evil that he has in him. We see it a lot in Clone Wars, the animated series of late, and we also see it, and obviously in episode 3 a little bit, in episode 2 of the movies. I think it's just showing, it's foreshadowing, right? He's using the Sith lightsaber. He loses control of his emotions, and he's just so focused on defeating this enemy instead of showing that restraint that the Jedi usually do. So I think it's, I used the word before, foreshadowing, but also it just kind of gives us a little sneak peek of what's to come, just from his emotion standpoint, not just the character himself.
Yeah, Bash, you think about Anakin's arc here. I still think just the he had me laughing when they basically decided we're going to make him look like Rambo for the end of the fight, but I did think it was a good arc.
I really like that scene. Just like he picks up the red lightsaber, all of a sudden his personality changes. They start with a Duel of Fates music. And then the little snippets when he's like hammering on Asajj Ventress, where you have Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Yoda just looking disappointed. I think it's a very well drawn shot. I agree with you. There's like a little bit of goofiness to it, but it's cool. It's not quite Anakin becoming Darth Vader in Ahsoka, but it's pretty good, I think.
I think I like it a lot. And what do you think, Pete, about how we lose Ventress here?
It's fine. Leaves it, open ended. You can kind of do anything with the character after that, and I think that was the point. Um, obviously they use Asajj Ventress in the upcoming, from '03, the upcoming Clone Wars that becomes wildly more successful. But I think it's fine. It's the typical pit of doom falling off the cliff. We think they're dead, but maybe they're not. Maybe they are. So I think it was fine. It's not finite, so it works for the franchise.
Yeah, Max, did you like how they had her go here? Now, obviously, Asajj had a big talking point during Bad Batch because she was resurrected from the Dark Disciple stuff. So
I I think it's kind of, I guess they never really did anything with the character prior to Clone Wars '08. She's just sort of, she's there, she's gone. And in between, you can play her in Battlefront 2, the old one. But yeah, I mean, I thought she was like a good, I guess in '08, they really develop her character, they develop her story, they develop her background. Here, she's just kind of like, she's an assassin, she goes to kill Anakin, and she unleashes this dark side energy. So she sort of serves the purpose of the plot as opposed to the plot serving her.
yeah, I feel like she's more of like this bad guy of the week, basically, as opposed to like in Clone Wars '08, she basically becomes like a important secondary character where she's conflicted at points. She's playing both sides to suit her own needs. Like there's a lot that you like with Ventress in '08 that you don't get in '03.
Yeah, I mean she's like Dirge, who obviously I'm a big fan of, but she's the bad guy of the week. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, so let's go ahead here now. We'll go to the next arc I want to talk here is this Ilum arc here, where we get basically there's something we get the concept of Ilum is revisited in Clone Wars '08 with the Youngling arc. We get it here. We get Varys and Afi and Luminar and Dooley are getting a Kyber crystal. They get attacked by a bunch of chameleon droids. Yoda senses he is on Padme's ship for some reason and mind tricks her boss to let her security guard to go down there and fight, and then they rescue these Jedi before craziest happens here. And I did think Max, we did got this arc here, the Ilum stuff.
I thought it was the weakest part of the season, and it's not because it was bad necessarily, but just because I thought the Mace Windu, Grievous, Asajj Ventress stuff was more interesting or more engaging. Uh, Yoda, obviously, seeing him, I don't want to say in his prime because he's in his 800s, but seeing him in action is always exciting when he's taking down the droid army, seeing the way that he moves. But I don't know, just it was whatever for me. It's like, okay, like here's the temple, here's Yoda, he saves him, great.
Yeah, Pete, what did you think about this arc?
I'm kind of with Max. I'm in the same camp. I would call it the weakest arc. It's interesting to see, Barriss Offee, right? And her master Luminara.
Yep.
Am I correct on that? Okay.
Yeah.
What I did find interesting, though, I don't know if you guys caught this, was there were 3 different color kyber crystals.
Yeah.
During this scene, it wasn't just the red. Excuse me. It wasn't just the green or the blue. There was like a pink purple.
Yeah.
Now I don't know Star Wars lore to that depth. Maybe you guys do. The people at home that are listening want to roast the hell out of me. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I thought the whole purple lightsaber was not a kyber crystal scenario. It was like a like a red lightsaber. It's a corrupted, kyber crystal, right? I always thought the purple was it's like a little corrupted, but depending on what side you're on, if you're more good than evil, that's where you get the orange and the purple lightsabers. The orange was more evil, and the purple you were more good. That's how I understood it. That's how I thought I read up on it. I could be wrong. So I just found it interesting that there was literally a pink or purple kyber crystal in the mix there versus just the green and blue. So maybe it was something that George Lucas was toying with the idea of, because Mace Windu was the first and only character to not have a red, blue, or green lightsaber in the franchise, at least in the movies. So yeah, that was the only thing I found like interesting about it. But it was a weak arc that wasn't terrible, but we didn't really need it. The other stuff that preceded it and succeeded it were a lot more interesting.
Yeah, Max, on the Kyber crystal thing, I mean, obviously, we know the real life story behind the purple because we know that was basically Samuel.
Mace Windu won a purple one.
I want white people to see me in the movie, so I've got my own distinct lightsaber, so that's why I'm purple. But I think it's sort of like in canon. I think '08 we see that like they're just generic like white crystals that basically get like a color form when the Jedi comes. I think this may have been like them workshopping what they want to do with it.
Yeah, I'm also not as familiar with Pete as to like what each crystal means or where each crystal comes from. And I would have to go back and see it. It could have honestly just been like, you know what, we know that Mace Windu has a purple one, so we have to draw in purple and blue and green, and there wasn't really much canonical thought put into it. I guess now it's all legends, right? So it doesn't really count. But that is true. That is interesting that it's not supposed to be a crystal, but they have it.
Yeah, and I'll also point out here this arc. Another thing I noticed here is that like Pete, when we did Clone Wars, we had a lot of complaints about how like they wrote Padme terribly and how she all the time she's basically just like getting kidnapped and having to get rescued by Anakin. Like here we see that she's actually useful.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe from Padme. I would say that the movie Clone Wars 03 and Clone Wars 08 all have a different vibe of Padme.
Yeah.
I feel like the movies are kind of a mix of 03 and 08. And then you have the two extremes, right? You have 08 where Padme is kind of like, I don't want to say helpless, but like I feel like she's not as much of a badass as we thought she would be. And then 03, she's like, no, I'm going out there. We're doing this. And she just is kind of full into the action. So it's interesting. It's just a different vibe, and it's a different way to write the character. Would it be nice to have some consistency with the character? Yes, but I mean, there's other characters in Star Wars and any other property out there that will have inconsistencies between different depictions of them. So I'm not terribly upset about it, but I thought it was cool. I thought it's a great look for Padme, and I think that's probably how Padme should have been, um, projected on the screen and animation just in general.
Yeah,
She
Matt.
definitely. Oh, go on.
What you think about Padme here?
I was going to echo Pete's comments. I think she came across more like Leia, which I think is how the character is supposed to be written, right? Like she's a little bit snarky, sarcastic, but she can hold her own in combat. So when she's kind of like toying a little bit with Tycho, when Yoda's manipulating him, or she like uses 3PO as the distraction to take out the droids, I thought that was good. And also, again, big Rita Leslie fan. I will say that whenever she did this character, all I could hear, I don't know if you guys watched Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I did.
No? You did?
Yes.
Okay, so all I hear when Padme was talking, I was like, "Oh, it's Azula."
Yeah.
That's all I kept thinking about. But no, I thought I thought they did a good job. It's just, again, the others, it wasn't a bad arc. It's just it was more interesting. The other stuff was just more interesting.
Yeah,
And it's not a disservice to her character.
yeah, Max. I don't know if you weren't around when we went back. We actually the origin of this podcast basically we went back and we watched seasons of Clone Wars. We tracked things. We went on. One of the track is how many times Padme got kidnapped. I think it was like up around like 8 or 9 over the course of the series. It's way too high.
That is quite a lot for someone who's supposed to be able to hold their own and be like a strong feminine lead.
Yeah.
The Padme episode I remember from '08 was the one where like I guess everyone's being held hostage in the Senate by the bounty hunters, and she kind of conspires to help get them freed. I guess in that one she is sort of kidnapped, but she's like the leader of trying to escape.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
don't get me wrong. There are moments in 08 Clone Wars where she's great. Like, I mean, at one point, Padme almost ends the Clone Wars but through diplomacy, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But there are like too often they kind of sideline her because they have to make Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan the 3 leads of the show, basically.
Yeah. I guess that's true. That is interesting that it's that many times. But yeah, here I felt like they wrote her strongly, and she's, I think, what you'd expect out of this character, but she just gets overshadowed.
Yep. Now let's go to my favorite stuff here from the season, aside from Grievous here. The Mace Windu stuff, when we get to basically see Mace Windu be a badass on Dantooine. He basically shows up like with one man and a small army of clones against like a giant battalion of droids. He basically wrecks shop and basically sends them all home. He blows up ships in the sky. It's incredible. And at the end, like he sees this little kid, he's like this, like kind of like does the Mean Joe Green thing where he drinks the soda, just drinks the water. That's like the vibe I got from that. But I did think, Max, this was so much fun. It's clearly your background here. I think it's like a highlight of season 2.
I think, yeah, this was so cool to watch. Like, I remember watching that when it first came out and just being like, he is such a badass. And the fact that I mean, I think you can understand like how he managed to almost take down Palpatine, but for Anakin's interference, and just like how powerful the Jedi Mace Windu is, that he takes out like an entire squadron of droids by himself. It's incredible. It's the animation's really cool, and I know Mace Windu, his style of combat, from what I remember, is supposed to be like he has a little bit of like the dark side energy, and it's him like feeding off of it, but not letting him overcome it. And you can see his style is just so much more aggressive, like where he's like punching the droids in the stomach and like almost going like martial arts on them. I think that it shows him in a lot different light than you otherwise see him in the series.
Yeah, Pete sort of gives the vibes of like Cal Kestis embracing the dark side in Jedi Survivor. That sort of vibe with Mace Windu.
And that's why he has the purple lightsaber. No, I just, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Mace Windu is a badass, and I think we've talked about this too before in the podcast when it comes to the movies episodes themselves, and also episodes of Clone Wars '08, where we feel like we're not getting enough Mace Windu, what he can actually do. You know, remember in Revenge of the Sith, he pretty much goes with no reinforcements, Anakin, uh, to face off against the top Sith Lord, if you will, knowingly, just by himself. Obviously, he's capable of it, and obviously, he had the confidence to do so. I want to see why he had the confidence to do so. What made him such a huge warrior for the Clone Wars or the Jedi, Order or anything like that? So it's good to see that in '03 they were highlighting this. I just wish we got more over the years.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
don't recall him fighting like that in '08. Like they definitely had scenes of him in battle, but never something this crazy.
The only thing I remember from '08 with Mace Windu was like there was that one arc where they stuck him with Jar Jar Binks just to like just to irritate him. And that's the only arc
Yeah.
being the lead.
Was that yeah, I recall he like led some battle if that was the same arc that I'm thinking of. But otherwise, yeah, I felt like he wasn't you never really saw him fight. This is like they highlight him and he's great.
I mean, there are a couple of times where he like fights, like where like maybe it's like a three-part and he's in fighting in one part of it. The arc I was thinking was like there was this arc in season 6, that was the Netflix season where like he and Jar Jar are investigating disappearances and they basically end up fighting Mother Talzin at the end of it.
I vaguely recall that. I think most episodes with Jar Jar I try and push out of my brain.
It's one Pete had a famous rant on because Jar Jar got a love interest.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. By the way, random question. Are you guys subscribers to the Darth Jar Jar theory?
Pete, your
A
thoughts?
little.
Yes and no. I feel like they set it up quite nicely and it could have worked, but like I also don't think that was a plan. I just think this was a klutz that was always going to be a klutz and gave some sort of, and I use air quotes, comic relief to a what's supposed to be a serious storyline, right? Of the rise of the fall of not only a Republican Empire but a person in Anakin Skywalker. So I it could have worked 100% if they wanted to pivot to do that. They could have done it, but I think he was just mainly supposed to be there as a klutz.
Yeah, I agree with Pete. I feel like this is the case where like if you want to look for it and make it feel like it works, it can. But like I feel like he's just basically a dimwit who gets manipulated by Palpatine to do what he wants. And then I don't know, Max, you knowing Ken would have some after the movies because like we never see him again on screen. But apparently, like, he basically is like a street performer who gets like shunned from society because he's like helped Palpatine get power. Like, that's pretty dark.
I did not know that. In the Legends version, what I thought happened was he's on Alderaan when it gets blown up by the Death Star. But that's even darker. That's awful. He's a street performer.
It's straightforward back on Naboo. Like, nope, the Gungans and the Naboons don't want him.
Oh my God. I don't buy the theory, but I know like you watch episodes of Clone Wars where his like kookiness takes out an entire army, just him being a klutz. And I'm like, I could see it. I could see him being like a Sith Lord bumbling his way through life.
Yeah.
But he's no Mace Windu, let me tell you.
Yeah, he's not a Mace Windu for sure here. And we'll end the plot here with the arrival of General Grievous here. And obviously, I watched this during the animation live action bracket to get the context on Grievous here. The way he shows up, Pete, is so menacing and I think so much cooler than you actually see him in the movie because he basically comes in, he's like the Predator from like Alien versus Predator. He's just like dropping out of the sky, crushing Jedi, like basically stampeding people to death. Like this version of Grievous is awesome.
Yeah, I think we lose out on that version of Grievous because he's introduced already in the anime series. He's already kind of a threat. He's already there. So you don't get that mysterious, almost like you said, alien versus predator kind of like, you know, just spookiness and just creepiness of General Grievous. A little jarring to hear the voice acting on General Grievous, considering I know what Clone Wars '08 and also what the movie sounds like. It was very interesting. It was almost like it kind of reminded me of like who the original voice actor was for Darth Vader back
Yeah.
in the original movies versus when they got James Earl Jones to replace as the voice actor instead of the person in the suit kind of a situation. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit, but it was super cool. I found it very interesting though that he was fighting with also his feet.
Yeah.
I think the change, sorry if I'm like going too far ahead here, but I think the change to having the arms spread out to 4 versus him using his arms and legs was a better option for sure.
Yeah, and I'll before I go to Max, I'll point out, Pete, they address the voice next week in Clone Wars of 3, season 3. They address the voice situation.
Got it.
Oh, that was going to be my comment, which is I think other than the voice, which I like the movie voice better. I didn't recall they changed his voice. I love that scene. That's why when I was ranking the live action transitions, I struggle a lot with Grievous because I think he's fine in the movies, but he's just so good here. He is terrifying, and he single-handedly almost takes out 5 Jedi.
Yeah, like including 3 masters of the council.
Yeah, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shakti, and Aayla Secure, right? And he takes out the other 2 Jedi who I've never seen.
Yeah, that random Ki-Adi-Mundi Padawan had never had a chance.
That one was interesting because aren't the Maigidans supposed to be like an endangered species, and that's why Ki-Adi-Mundi can have wives, but now there's like 2 of them that happen to just be together.
Yeah. Also, Pete, didn't this Padawan kind of look like Shaggy?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, it gave Anakin vibes a little bit too for like a brief second, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Max, there gets Cartoon Network. I wonder if they sort of had that writer say, "Hey, can you draw this guy, kind of sneak one of our characters in here as like a, aha, he, there he is," and then like he's just off the screen.
So I just looked this up, and that character's name is Shagi, Shapostrophe
Oh, we got it.
So I think that's uh yeah, he's inspired by Shaggy. It's a clear reference. But
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, Grievous is he's awesome in this scene. He's absolutely one of the most terrifying characters.
yeah, and Pete, I did like his fighting style here as well because with Grievous here, I did think it was fun, sort of like where he is just like not just like so like there's sort of like no. I feel like there's a little bit of restraint in '08 Clone Wars and in the movies where like he's just, oh, I'm fighting with the lightsaber, I'm gonna run if I get in trouble. Whereas like here, like, nope, 6-on-1, I got this. I'm gonna take them all down at once.
Yeah, I think the movie though too isn't Grievous like sick. Like, isn't that the whole like premise of Grievous at that moment in time? He's coughing, he's not really like present. Um, so let's call this in his prime, if you will. So it makes sense maybe why he was a little bit more I'm gonna run away versus gung ho in this. But still super badass. Again, the fighting style is a little weird with me with the feet. That threw me off a little bit. Still cool, but I think the forearms, especially with like the droid transformer esque kind of action style of the movie, was a little bit better.
Yeah,
Spinning of like the center part, that was really cool.
yeah.
That was.
And to clarify the timing of this one, the first season of Clone Wars '03 aired from in November of 2003. This group aired in March to early April of 2004. Then you wait a year to get the conclusion of this cliffhanger.
But I think the in the Star Wars timeline, the third season of Clone Wars, I think takes place in like 19 ABY, and the second season and the first season must take place closer to like 22.
Yeah.
So I think Pete's probably right that something happened to Grievous in between then, so he's a little bit weaker. He's a little bit less aged.
Yeah, there's definitely a time jump in the middle of season 3. You can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one point I'll spoil for next week here where like Anakin gets initiated as a Jedi Knight, then like the next episode he has long flowing hair, which does not grow overnight.
Yeah. They definitely like progressed the timing during the series. So I guess the season 1, season 2, there's like 3 years apart from season 3.
Yeah, I think season 1, season 2, you're right, Matt. I think it's like basically right as the war is starting. And then the first episode of season 3 next week is going to be in that same time frame. And then after that, we go to the end, close to the end of the war.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead here. Let's sort of wrap up the episode here. We're gonna do some MVPs and LAPs. I'm gonna recap the board from last week. I actually made the MVP board, Pete. So like as we do for the live action shows and the animated shows when we have like episodes like this, I made the full MVP board. Give me 1 second to find it.
All right, sounds good. I mean, I'm glad that we have that graphic. I think it's really important, at least for me, to have a visual to see where everyone's kind of stands. So I
Yep.
appreciate it at least, and
Yes.
people on YouTube will appreciate it as well.
Yeah, so here's the graphic here. So
Ah.
the board, Obi-Wan, Dirge, and Asajj Ventress are atop at +1. Dooku is -1, and Anakin is -2, bringing up the rear of the MVP LP board. So we'll take a look here, see who I have starting us off here. So Max, you go first. Who is your MVP of season 2 of Clone Wars 03?
I'm really torn between Mace Windu and Grievous, but I think I have to give it to Mace Windu because he absolutely annihilates that droid army. Whereas Grievous, he does kill 2 Jedi, he does corner a group of Jedi, but then his army gets blown to smithereens by that Republic gunship. So I think just in terms of victoriousness, Mace Windu. I think we also, we see a little bit more of Grievous in that fighting in season 3, so he could contend. But Mace Windu for my MVP. LVP. Oh, sorry.
We'll wrap up our MVPs first. So MVP, I'm giving it to Mace
Okay.
also because I agree with everything you said, Max. I feel like that if there's one thing I think of this season, it's Mace Windu mowing down the entire clone army by himself. Like I think that's the thing I'll stick with me this season. So he's the MVP for me. So Pete, want to wrap it up?
Yeah, boring answer, clean sweep, Mace Windu for everything you guys said. I mean, there's nothing much more to say other than those things.
Yeah, the board could influence Nick's. I think Nick's going to weigh in with his MVPs of season 1 and season 2. So we'll see if the math gets adjusted next week. But MVPs here, I'm going to give it to Shaggy, as Max just pointed out here, because this is probably like the biggest wuss on the board on the Jedi side because like he basically has like 3 masters with him. He has a small army of clones supporting him. And his first thing is like, I gotta get out of here. And Ki-Adi-Mundi's like, no, stay. Like, we got this. And then he goes and gets immediately curb stopped by Grievous. So he gets the LVP for me. So Pete, who's your LVP?
C3PO. What an idiot. Literally R2's like, yeah, there's still 2 more out there. He freaks out, and then Padme's like, can you go get my coat? And he's like, yeah, and he just goes out. So I understand he's a protocol droid, but like, idiot. C3PO.
Not the smartest droid out there.
No.
Max, now you have your LVP board.
I was going to give it to C3PO also for the exact same reason that he's just like target fodder and he falls for the Padme coat thing, which is really funny. I thought that was clever, but he's the LVP for me.
Yeah, for me, I couldn't let Shaggy get away unscathed because, like, to me, that was just so bad.
He's it's interesting because that is very true to character, right? The Shaggy and Scooby-Doo would always run away, and Shaggy in Clone Wars is trying to flee as well.
Yep.
Now, in season 3, if we get like, I mean, there was like a dog werewolf Jedi. If that is Scooby, we know like 1,000% something's up there when it comes to Scooby-Doo and the Clone Wars 03 series. But anyway.
No, that is Vulvith Mon.
Okay, well that's way cooler than Scooby, but all right. I tried.
Yeah,
that would have been cool.
It's so funny that like they've actually put a Shaggy character into this cartoon series.
You know who we actually didn't talk a lot about was Barriss Offee. And I was curious because, when we see her in Clone Wars 03, or sorry, 08, she's like the kind of undercover evil dark Jedi. But here, I mean, she seems pretty good. So I kind of felt a little bit unnerved going back and being like, oh, yeah, she's like still a good guy here.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of like retconned her between the movie and '08, where they sort of like made her younger in the in the Clone Wars '08 series. I feel like in the Attack of the Clones, you first see her, and in here, you sort of feel like she's the same, like around the same age as Luminara.
Yeah, I mean, she's an interesting character. I feel like they keep bouncing back and forth with her and what she's supposed to be and what significance she's supposed to play. Just seems like that type of character. Unfortunately, I feel like Barasoffy could be a huge, contender for a lot of different shows. I mean, we talked about it for the Ahsoka show, right? It's like they were friends and now rivals because she framed Ahsoka for that whole Jedi Temple explosion in Clone Wars '08. So it, I feel like they were trying to figure out what they could do with Barasoffy, and it just never landed. Every time you see her, it's not bad content. It's just more so different.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I also think here in terms of the Barris Offee thing, like Star Wars as a whole, Max, tell me if you agree with this. I feel like they have a history of sort of like introducing these characters or storylines and never really finishing most of these things and sort of let these things dangle a bit. Like all the stuff that was introduced in Solo is a good example of this. Whatever happened with Timothy Oliphant's character in Boba Fett after he gets up in the what do you call it, in the back to tank is another one. Like they have a lot of things they just introduce and just don't revisit for some reason.
Yeah, they do tend to tease things out and never come back to it. I guess that's right. And I guess some of the ideas that, maybe some writer down the way could write a book about it or flesh that out. Here, I mean, obviously, they just retconned it and they're like, here's what Barasoffy is. But they definitely could do more with her character. I thought she was very interesting in '08 Clone Wars. Here, obviously, she only got a little bit of screen time. But it's just, it's interesting to it. I think we've been discussing the differences between the series. So it's interesting when you have a character who here is like totally good, but the way they wrote her in the future is like she's kind of evil under the surface. So it's just like complete switch of the character's personality.
Yeah, well, maybe Pete, maybe we'll talk about the future. Maybe we'll go through some of these. We did abandoned projects back in January. Maybe we can look at maybe some abandoned storylines we really want them to actually pick up at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's definitely a conversation I'm excited to have.
All right, so let's also go to the season rankings here. And this does not reflect Nick's ranking yet. He's not got weighed in yet on season one, but we had a very almost evil ranking here. We had a 6.67 for episode for season one of Clone Wars '03. So that's where we are right now. We'll check our way in here. So take a look at the board here. So he was up first. So he gave me a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is worst 1978 holiday special. 10 is up here with the Prison Break of Andor as the greatest Star Wars kind of all time. Where do you feel on season 2 of Clone Wars '03?
Yeah, I mean, I give it an 8. It's pretty high considering what I've given shows in the past. That's because there's really nothing left to be desired, right? We see a lot of information, we see a lot of interesting storylines, not like we did in season one. We kind of have that throwaway Ilum story arc, but I wasn't mad about it. It wasn't bad. It was just more so okay, Saturday morning cartoonish kind of thing, but it's fine. When it comes to design and graphics and their animation and stuff, it's Star Wars '03, Star Wars '04, whatever the season is. Like I can't ding it for that. So I enjoyed it. So I'll give it an 8.
Max, how about you?
I gave season one between a 7 and an 8, right? That was my grade.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay. I think I would give this one an 8. I agree with Pete. The Ilum storyline was a bit of a throwaway, but it was still fine. And I feel like the rest of the season was very good. Anakin's fight with Asajj Ventress, Mace Windu's fight on Dantooine, the General Grievous attack. I mean, those are all really, really excellent scenes. I think I would have, if Ilum had been a stronger storyline, I would have ranked it higher. But those three storylines are excellent pieces of content, and I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, last week was a 6 for me. I went up to a 7.5 this week. Obviously, the Mace Windu stuff is tremendous here. Two big down points for me is number one, the Ilum, as you guys have mentioned already, like the weakest of the bunch and takes down for me. And I think Rambo Anakin was a little too silly for me in terms of like his look at that last fight here. I did think they were trying to go for a bit there, and I don't think it landed with me. So that's a little lower than you guys.
All right, fair enough.
Fair.
All right, so that's it for this week here. Next week, we're going to wrap it all up here. Clone Wars '03 Season 3. It's if you were watching on Disney Plus, it is Volume 2. It is only 5 episodes. They have 12 minutes each next week. So they are longer episodes. It's sort of more similar to what we're looking for out of like Clone Wars 08. First, or halfway there.
I had this
Yeah.
one on DVD growing up.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Disney Plus, why couldn't you just separate it by season? It's a streaming service. It's not like you have to worry about a physical DVD. You just 30 minutes or 34 minutes for the first season, 35 minutes for the second season, and the third season's however long it is. Why we have to make it complicated and say volume 1 is seasons 1 and 2, volume 2 is season 3?
Well, Pete, I think the answer to that question, I think they literally just scanned the volume 1 DVD on Disney Plus and said, okay, this is the volume 1.
I hear you. I hear you. But it's confusing as all hell. Just put it as season 1.
I just think they were too lazy to just split it up.
Actually, it probably took more work for them to compile everything and make it seamless to make a volume 1 than just scanning the DVD in. But I digress.
Yeah, well, Max, I think that literally volume 1, you said the DVD, you had the DVD for season 2 back in the day. Was it basically just like we see on Disney Plus, where it's the intro, then they run the shorts back to back, and then they do the credits at the end?
No, I had the volume. I guess I have the season 3.
Yeah, you volume 2. Yeah.
Yeah, volume 2. And that was God, I have to like go back. I had all the long episodes and they were all just kind of linked together. But season 3 is a lot more of like a coherent storyline.
Yeah.
I don't know what the DVD for season 1 and 2 was.
It would not shock me. They literally just did this. This was on the DVD for season 1. They just got a DVD, scanned it onto like Disney Plus servers. Okay, here you go, guys.
Maybe. Also, they're calling something from 03 vintage, which also pisses me off.
That is
20 years.
I guess, is that not time to be vintage in the wine world?
I mean, are we vintage? We were born before 03.
I was born, but well before 03.
Yeah, same here. So
They call the 90s classic rock. So
I'd rather it be classic than vintage. Vintage makes it seem like it's from like 80 years ago.
It makes it seem like it's in the same company as the Star Wars Holiday Special.
And they probably call that classic and not vintage.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
That's for sure. Well, thank you guys for coming on here, Mac. Once again, thanks for taking the time to come on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to wrapping up the Clone Wars 03 saga with you next week.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me again, and looking forward to volume 2, season 3.
Yep, the longer episodes next week, so that's gonna be fun to watch here. And Pete, if you want to follow you on social media, I'm gonna do that.
At Consy29 on Twitter, CONSY29. AP Tyler 308 created this background on Reddit, so make sure you give them a follow.
Yep, you can also follow me on social media, mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. And always where I plug the Just in the Suffering podcast stuff, but I have no idea where I'm going to be podcasting about the middle of May yet. So you'll have to check out that podcast if you want to see what I'm talking about in the sports world at that point. But we'll be back next week. Clone Wars 03, season 3, wrapping up as part of Micro Month. And until then, may the Force be with you.